I'm going to continue with level 6. All right, find the perimeter of this triangle. Okay, once again, I'm going to rotate this by using my two-finger gesture and rotating. And I'm going to drag it to the center of the screen and maybe make it bigger. I need to find the whole perimeter. To find the perimeter, I'm missing two sides. All right, I have the height, but I don't have the base or the hypotenuse. All right, so my two legs, when we're talking about the trig ratios, are the opposite and the adjacent. All right, so let's label all the different sides. I always start off with my hypotenuse. It's always the longest side of the triangle. It's always found directly opposite the right angle. So I just go from the right angle to over here. So this is the hypotenuse. So I'm going to fill that in. And then opposite of the angle, so if we walk away from the angle, it's the first side we smack into, opposite the angle that we're given is going to be the opposite side. So I'm going to call this leg the opposite leg. All right, and the other leg is, of course, the adjacent leg. And remember, adjacent means beside, and it's beside the angle we're given. Okay, it's just not the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is also beside the angle we're given. I want to figure out, let's say I want to figure out the hypotenuse first. So I have my adjacent and I want to find the hypotenuse. Adjacent over hypotenuse is the cosine ratio. So I'm going to use that first. So I'm going to write the cosine of theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. All right, then I'm going to fill in what I know. So the cosine, my angle theta is 76 degrees, is equal to the adjacent is 7.1 centimeters. And the hypotenuse is my unknown. All right, so I'm going to use cross multiplication. I'm basically going to switch the hypotenuse and the cos of 76 degrees. In terms of cross multiplication, I can just think of it as I'm switching the cosine of 76 degrees and the hypotenuse. We're just switching them around. Okay, so hypotenuse is equal to 7.1 divided by the cosine of 76 degrees. All right, handy dandy calculator time. So 7.1 divided by 76 cosine is equal to 29.348. I'm going to round it to like 3 or 4 decimal places. All right, so our hypotenuse is, or I could say A is 29.3483. All right, so I'm just going to put that on my diagram. .3483 centimeters. All right, now I would like to find the opposite. So I have the adjacent, and I'm being asked to find the opposite. Well, opposite and adjacent make tangent. All right, so let's go and have a look at that. So I'm going to write my tangent ratio here. So the tangent of theta is the opposite divided by the adjacent. All right, and theta is 76 degrees. And the opposite side, that's our unknown. I could just write B, but I'm going to write opposite. Doesn't matter which you put. Opposite over the adjacent, which is 7.1. Okay, to get my opposite alone, I'm going to cross multiply the 7.1. It's going to multiply the tan of 76. So 7.1 times the tangent of 76 degrees is equal to our opposite side. All right, so handy dandy calculator time again. 7.1 times 76 tangent is equal to 28.4765. And you have to ask yourself, do these answers make sense? 28.4765 is equal to the opposite. I'm just going to write that on my diagram. 28.4765 centimeters. All right, so my perimeter is just going to be adding those three together. My 29.3483 plus my 7.1 is equal to 64.92. 48 centimeters. Okay, so back into our program. 8 space centimeters. All right, then we click on the check button to check to see if we're right. And if we are, we get a little celebration. Let's do one more question like this. Here's a question, and I'm just going to use my two-finger gesture to rotate it. All right, I'm just dragging it using a single finger, resizing it using the pinching gesture. Okay, now it's time to label the sides. So the hypotenuse, it's always the longest side, it's always the side opposite the right angle, and one more clue, it's the side that doesn't contain the right angle. Okay, so it doesn't touch the right angle. So it's the only side that doesn't touch the right angle. The other two are called the legs. One is the opposite, and the other is the adjacent. Okay, the opposite is always found opposite of the angle that we're talking about. We're talking about 52 degrees. So this angle, this side B, is the opposite side, leaving this leg A to be the adjacent side. All right, so let's label all that. So my hypotenuse, which is opposite the right angle, the longest side of the triangle, I'm just going to label it hype. All right, and then opposite the right angle, if we just walk away from the right angle, it's the first side we smack into, I'm going to call that the opposite side. All right, and the last leg is obviously the adjacent. Okay, it's adjacent means beside, and notice it's beside the angle we're given. It's just not the hypotenuse. All right, now I want to find, let's say I want to find B first, or find A first, it doesn't matter. I'm going to find A first. Now I know the hypotenuse, and I want to find A, which is the adjacent. Adjacent over hypotenuse is the cosine ratio, so I'm going to be using the cosine ratio to find this. So cosine of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then fill in what you know. So the cosine, the angle we're talking about is 52 degrees. So the cosine of 52 is A, the adjacent side, over the hypotenuse, which is 37.22 hectometers. All right, I want to get my A alone, so I'm just going to cross multiply that 37.22. So 37.22 times the cosine of 52 degrees is A. A? You got it. All right, so we're just going to multiply using our handy-dandy calculator machine. There it is. Hello, Mr. Calculator. Come on out. Don't be shy. So 37.22 times 52 degrees cosine is equal to 22.9149. All right, so I'm just going to round to like 4 decimal places. So 22.9149 is equal to A. And I'm just going to copy that into memory. That'll come in handy later. Okay, and maybe I'm going to write it on my diagram. So 22.9149 hectometers. All right, now the opposite side. Now at this point you could use Pythagoras' theorem if you wanted, but I'm going to use my trig ratios because that's why we're here, to learn the trig ratios. So I'm trying to find the opposite, and I'm given the hypotenuse. Okay, so opposite over hypotenuse is the sine ratio. So sine of theta is opposite over hypotenuse. And then I fill in what I know. So the sine of 52 degrees is the opposite, which is our B side, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 37.22 hectometers. All right, and to get the B alone, I'm just going to cross multiply. So we get 37.22. And remember, cross multiplying is the same as just multiplying both sides by 37.22. It would just cancel, totally cancel on the right-hand side. Okay, so times the sine of 52 degrees is equal to B. All right, handy-dandy calculator time. So 37.22 hectometers times 52 degrees sine of 52, but I put the 52 and then I have to click sine on my calculator. Your calculator might be different. And that is equal to 29.32976. Now let's just see if that all makes sense. Okay, this is 37, it's the longest side. All right, the adjacent is 22, and this is a little bit longer than that, 29. Yeah, that does make sense. All right, so these numbers do make sense. Always ask yourself that. So 29.3298. Okay, I'm rounding my answers to the nearest 10,000ths place. All right, so the 6 tells the 7 to round up to an 8. Okay, and that is in hectometers. And that is B. And so I'm just going to write that on my diagram. So 29.3298 hectometers. Okay, and so I'm just going to add them all up. So the perimeter is going to be my 29.3298 plus my 22, my adjacent side, 22.9149, plus my hypotenuse side, which was given as 37.22 hectometers. Okay, so I already have this number in my calculator, plus the number I put in memory, Command V, plus my 37.22 is equal to a grand total of 89.4647 hectometers. All right, so back into the program. 89.4647 space hectometers. And then I click on the check button to check to see if I'm right. All right, so let's do that. Check. Yay! Excellent. And that's how you do the perimeter of a triangle using trigonometry.